Hello everyone. So I'm Suresh Peiris. So today I'll be talking about Kubeflow, which is one of the ML-based tools. So basically, my topic is about where machine learning meets Kubernetes. So now let's get into the topic. All right. So before we start the session, I would like to ask a small question. How many of you are machine learning developers? Can I see a raise of hands? Those who are working on machine learning projects. How many of you are data scientists over here? I see a couple of hands. All right. So now I'm going to talk about how you can deploy your machine learning models on Kubernetes. So before we start the topic, let's talk about what's MLOps. So MLOps, in short form, it's called machine learning operations. It's like the behind-the-scenes magic that makes machine learning models work smoothly. So it's all making sure that when we create smart computing models, they not only work in the way we expect, but we should always focus on the longer run as well. So imagine it as a team effort, right? So involving computer scientists, data experts, and tech folks. So they work together to take our smart models to the next level and also to put them into the real action. So once they are out there, we have to make sure that they run smoothly. So think of it as a conveyor belt that takes our smart models from the lab to the real world. So making sure that they are always in the best shape. So this helps us to make smarter decisions and also to do things faster, because then we can deploy these in different situations. So in simplest terms, MLOps helps us to build, deploy, and keep track of our smart computer models, and also build super reliable applications that makes our lives much more easier. So now let's talk about MLOps. So these are some of the stages that are involved when you're building MLOps life cycles. So the first stage is the design stage, and the second stage is the model development stage, and finally we have the operation stage. So in the design stage, what we do is basically we gather the requirements, and also we do the data cleansing part. So depending on different requirements, we have to gather the data sets, and also we have to do some pre-processing. So that's where we have the design phase. So here we take different kinds of ML use cases into consideration, and also we do data availability checks. So when talking about the development phase, there are certain things that we should do to develop these machine learning models. So we can use multiple frameworks in this phase. For an example, TensorFlow, PyTorch, scikit-learn, and these are some of the frameworks that most of the machine learning developers use in order to develop machine learning models. So also people use workbenches such as JupyterLab, and there are so many other there are so many other notebooks that most of people use to develop these machine learning models. Finally, the operations parts. So once we are done with the development phase, we are supposed to deploy our machine learning models into the real environment. So for an example, most of the developers nowadays, once they come up with a machine learning model, they just get a normal standard instance and they deploy it there. But in the real scenario, for an example, if you are building scalable applications, we should always consider the fact that you are getting a huge number of requests. And your machine learning model has to support auto-scaling and also auto-scaling down as well. So you have to make sure that your ML model continuously keep working on, and also you should have the monitoring and triggering as well to keep the smooth flow of your machine learning model. So now let's talk about why should we host machine learning models on Kubernetes. So these are some of the reasons why we should deploy machine learning models on Kubernetes. So the first reason is that the portability. So especially when it comes to these machine learning use cases, people use so many libraries and dependencies. So this dependency management could be a challenging part here, but for an example, if you are transferring your code from your local machine to the live server, you might have to configure the environment to meet your requirements. But with Kubernetes, what you all can do is you all can easily Dockerize your environment, and you all can deploy in the cloud server. So the second option is that, the second benefit is that, the microservices. So I know there are developers who's working on complex machine learning applications, and what they do is, so there could be different number of machine learning models, which is capable of executing certain number of tasks, and at the end, you all ensemble the results of all these machine learning models and get a standard output. So you can actually break these machine learning components into smaller parts, and you all can host it as microservices on Kubernetes. And like I mentioned in the earlier slide, the scalability factor should be there. The scalability factor is one of the most important things when you're building large-scale applications that serves so many customers. And you should always think about the scalability factor as well when you're developing ML models. So when talking about the monitoring aspect, in order to get the best results of the machine learning models, we should always consider about the longer run. So in some scenarios, you all might have to do some alterations to your machine learning models. So we should always keep monitoring your statistics as well as the performance of your machine learning models for tasks like hyperparameter tuning. So that's why monitoring is really important here. So this is where Kubeflow comes to play. So now you can see Kubeflow is a tool introduced by Google in 2017, and it's an open source platform that you all can use to deploy your machine learning models and also to configure your machine learning environment on scalable servers. So it's a complete toolkit that you all can use to do these operations like data training, tuning, and serving and monitoring of machine learning models. And the best option is that it's cloud platform independent. So you know there are so many platforms, there are so many ML platforms such as Google Vertex AI, the Azure AI platform, and the AWS AI platform. So these are all platform dependent. So Kubeflow is platform independent that you all can deploy in any of the cloud service providers. So you can even use your on-prem servers to deploy Kubeflow. So now let's have a look at the architecture of Kubeflow. So this is the architecture of Kubeflow that you all can see. There are so many ML tools such as Jupyter, NumPy, XGBoost, PyTorch. So these are some of the ML tools that you all get with the inbuilt version of Kubeflow. And these are some of the operators which are pre-installed with the stable release of Kubeflow. So for an example, you can see we have the PyTorch operator, TensorFlow operators, and also we have so many monitoring tools that you all get with Kubeflow. So like I mentioned earlier, it's platform independent. You all can even deploy on on-prem servers as well as on local servers as well. So it's completely platform independent. So now let's talk about some of the key components of Kubeflow. So this is a central dashboard. So once you're done with the deployment of Kubeflow, this is the first screen that you all see, right? So in this screen, you all can see the summary of all your deployments, as well as you can see the data sets and the recent notebooks and the pipelines, and all this information will be displayed as a summary. Right, so now let's talk about the second component, which is the Kubeflow notebooks. So this is an interesting tool that you all can use to create your own notebooks. So I think most of you all are using tools like Google Colab to create notebooks. And if you're interested, you all can use Kubeflow notebooks as well to create your own notebook environment. So now, as you can see in the screen, these are some of the frameworks that Kubeflow notebook supports. You can see the Jupyter is supported, and there are so many other frameworks that are supported with Kubeflow notebooks. So you can give your own spec and provision your own notebook for your own benefit. So now let's talk about Kubeflow pipelines, right? So for an example, when you're building machine learning models, there are certain stages that you all have to follow. For an example, the pre-processing stage, and the training stage, and the testing stage. So building a machine learning model is like baking a cake. So you start with data as your ingredients, clean it and prepare it, and select the ML model, choosing the recipe, like train it, and you have to test it as well, right? So you have to make the adjustments as well. So these are the different stages of the pipelines. And just as you may use a cookbook for baking, automation has streamlined this process for efficiency. So these are some of the stages that you all can provision with Kubeflow. You all can build your own pipeline with the visual editor that it provides. So also you can see in this section, this is how it looks like. And with this option, you can easily build pipelines on Kubeflow. Right, so now we are talking about another interesting component, which is called the catlib. So catlib works as an AutoML tool that you all can use to, so I think most of you are using AutoML, right? So when you are deploying machine learning models, you all might have worked with hyperparameter tuning as well as AutoML, and these stuff are really important for a machine learning engineer. So hyperparameter tuning is like finding the perfect recipe for training a computer application. So it's such as a machine learning model. Just like when you cook, you adjust ingredients like salt and spices to make it delicious, right? So in hyperparameter tuning, we tweak settings to make the program work its best. So think of these settings as dials and switches that control how the program learns and make decisions. So we try different combinations to find one that make the program perform its best. So just like getting the flavor of the favorite food that you all want, right? So hyperparameter tuning is all about experimenting and finding the sweet spots for these settings. So our program can do the job effectively as possible. And also it supports different kinds of AutoML techniques as well, AutoML frameworks as well. So this is an interesting tool that you all can use to do different experiments on AutoML and deployments. Right, so now we are going to talk about training operator. So these are some of the machine learning operators the Kubeflow comes with. You can see the chain operator, the PyTorch operator, and the TensorFlow job operator. So these are some of the operators that Kubeflow comes with. And these are actually very popular with machine learning engineers. So this automates the entire flow when you're deploying ML applications. So now let's talk about multi-tenancy. So for an example, there are large-scale corporates working with different types of user roles. And managing user roles could be challenging, right? Because we had to consider about a lot of factors like security, access levels, and stuff. So in Kubeflow, users are grouped for simplicity and efficiency. So in each user belongs to one or more user groups. So, and they only see and work on what's related to their group. So this makes managing machine learning projects much more easier. So just like role-based access control. So in this example, you can see this is how the architecture looks like once we configure multi-tenant mode on Kubernetes. And this has two use access routes. And it's handled by the HTTP gateway. And also, it's directly calling to the KCD API to manage these user roles and the SSO identity. Right, so if you are interested in learning more about Kubeflow, you all can scan this QR code, and there are so many tutorials available on Google Colabs, and you all can actually learn more about Kubeflow in a practical manner. So finally, thank you very much. And I hope you all learned more about Kubeflow and how you all can deploy your machine learning models on Kubernetes. If you all have any questions, you all can always reach out to me on social media, and I'm happy to help. Thank you very much.